Hey guys, it's Sean Wiggin of the day. Today, I am very sick. I am sick, so you go, baby. Still don't coughing, but I am very sick. So yeah, alright. Today I want to talk about I want to what what actually want to react to the video. Not the film for today. I know. I don't know what video I'm gonna do. Um, I might do a live stream, you know. I mean, not like a late party live stream because I can't do that. So, I don't know what to do, y'all. I'm bored. That's why I be doing the watch party. I can't do the watch party today, so whatever. Uh, I guess I could do like a Spider-Man movie waiting. I could do that. But yeah, I could do that.
From worst to best.
Update, okay, update.
Spider-Verse in theaters. I've been asked over and over again to update my Spider-Man ranking video. And for a long time, I was hesitant. But now that we're not one but two movies out from that video, I kind of felt like it was time to jump back into them. And I considered just re-editing my old video and inserting some new movies, especially since I had like a bad cold this week. But I felt like that was kind of a rip-off for you guys. Jump right in. Oh, but if you feel like helping out the channel and
Yeah, I could do this. Okay, I could do this. I could do it. We have to add Chris Midnight, Captain Midnight. Here, Spider-Man Lincoln was to this. So let's do this. I think number 8 is
Amazing Spider-Man 2. It almost feels mean to pick on this movie at this point. I'm sure 99% of you already know what's wrong with it. Jamie Foxx's performance, the half-assed Goblin storyline, and, of course, the tone. Which the movie never really has a handle on. But rewatching it, I really think the biggest mistake this movie makes is going all in on the Peter Parker parents storyline. It eats up a good chunk of the running time and is just so unnecessary. Peter Parker having important espionage parents is always an idea that's driven me crazy. Because I think it almost always misunderstands one of the core appeals of the character, that he's not special. He's not Harry Potter, some chosen one with a grand destiny laid out the second he was born. We have plenty of heroes like that already, and Peter Parker is not one of them. But I don't want to be completely dismissive of the film either. I think it has its moments. And the chemistry between Garfield and Stone is still pretty great, even if the script really undercuts that by making Peter Parker a creepy, whiny stalker.
Okay.
Oh, plus it has my favorite live-action Spider-Man costume. Not sure if that's a controversial opinion or not, but there you go.
Not.
Number 7, The Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
we're not done with the Mark Webb era yet. And both times I ranked this movie this low, I felt a little bad about it. Admittedly, it doesn't have the really low lows of the next movie on this list,
Oh, wow.
but it's also missing the higher highs. And I have a hard time watching it without thinking that I'd rather be watching the first Raimi movie instead. It's a perfectly okay movie in a franchise that shouldn't just settle for okay. And though it isn't as bad as the second one, this movie also has an incredibly underwhelming villain. Now, it has touches I like. I've already mentioned Stone and Garfield, but I also really like the scene where all the crane operators help Spidey out. It's going for that New Yorkers are in this together thing that the Raimi movies also did, but I think it's doing it well. I also like some of the Aunt May Peter stuff too, because these two are just very naturalistic actors, giving some pretty grounded performances. But at the end of the day, this is a comic book action movie, and that plot heavy stuff is really where the movie fails. So yeah, I have nothing against throwing this movie on like some rainy Sunday afternoon, but
So number 8 he has Amazing Spider-Man 2, and number 1 and number 7 he has Amazing Spider-Man. I mean, I disagree on the Amazing Spider-Man on the first Amazing Spider-Man. It don't should be that low, but in his opinion.
welcome back to New Rockstar.
So in his opinion.
Number 6, Spider-Man 3. This is one of those movies I have a weird relationship with. From liking it as a kid to hating it on DVD, and finally to a weird sort of respect. Now, I'm not as willing to go as far in my praise as High Top Films, who just released a really great video on it, but it's a movie that I think works really well when it's not falling flat on its face. The Raimi touches give it a more unique flavor than the web films, and even though I still think Venom is painfully mishandled here, I do really like the Sandman performance. I'm still a little sad that the Raimi series went out like it did, but I don't think Spider-Man 3 is a catastrophe either. It's a flawed movie, but it has the heart where it counts, and Tobey Maguire is still really giving it his all as Peter Parker here. Number 5, Spider-Man Far From Home. Alright, now we're crossing over into the movies that I really like without many caveats. I've made a few videos on Far From Home, but I'll try to sum up my thoughts here. I think this is a more meaningful story for Peter Parker than it gets credit for. People complain about the Iron Man connection a lot in these movies, but I think it's put to really good use here, forming the backbone of an emotional journey for Peter that has him tackling his self-doubt and fears in classic Spider-Man fashion. Mysterio is
Finally, he got the thing I've been saying the whole time. Thank you, Chris Midnight. Thank you, not Chris Midnight. Thank you, Captain Midnight. Thank you. I'm not about to say it. He gonna say it again.
Put to really good use here, forming the backbone of an emotional journey for Peter that has him tackling his self-doubt and fears in classic Spider-Man fashion. Mysterio is also just a ton of fun every time he's on screen. I think many of the villains in the previous films on this list,
like the
Lizard
or Venom, movie. These people crazy.
Tended to drag those movies. The ending is really just the icing on the cake. Now, I debated putting it above the next movie on the list, but ultimately I do think it's a little dragged down by not giving enough time to supporting players like MJ and Aunt May. In the end, though, Far From Home is still a film that I can go back to over and over again. It may not be perfect, but what it gets right, I think it absolutely nails.
Thank you.
Number 4, Spider-Man. The first Raimi Spider-Man movie is, to me, the gold standard for superhero origin stories. It's exciting, sad, and funny. Unlike Spider-Man 3, it feels like a movie made by a guy with a lot to prove. Sam Raimi had never handled a movie with this kind of budget before, and he really makes the most out of it. Flawed CG aside, I'm still kind of amazed by how exhilarating it is to watch Spider-Man swinging around the city here. There's a joy in it that contrasts really well with how tough Peter Parker's life actually is. Now, Tobey Maguire has never been my favorite Spider-Man when he's actually in costume. I've made that pretty clear in my other videos. Just don't think he handles the one-liners well. But his Peter Parker is great. It's a performance that's often more subtle and quiet than you would probably see in the MCU. Maguire's Peter is introspective, heroic, and goofy all at the same time. And the fact that you have Willem Dafoe around chewing a little scenery definitely doesn't hurt either. This was pretty easily my favorite movie when I was 9, and while its flaws are a little more apparent now, I can still feel that excitement in every frame. Spider-Man's first real big screen appearance is still one of his best. Number 3, Spider-Man Homecoming. Okay, I'm gonna be straight with you. Because of this channel, I've easily talked about Homecoming more than probably any other film in my entire life. So I'm gonna try to keep it short here. Homecoming built on the MCU's past in such a smart way, giving us one of my favorite Marvel villains. And its younger Spider-Man, more inexperienced and prone to mistakes, really nailed what I love so much about Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man. Holland is, in my opinion, the absolute best live-action Spider-Man in costume. He's funny, anxious, and always improvising. When it comes to watching Spider-Man just hang out and patrol the city, I don't think any other movie has come close. Number 2, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. This movie, being as good as it is, was definitely the biggest film surprise of 2018. I've seen it probably a dozen times now, and every time I do, I'm struck by all the love and detail that they put into this thing that I didn't even notice before. It's a really incredible balancing act, with things like Miles' school problems, his uncle's death, the concept of the multiverse, and a cartoon pig all fitting together perfectly in a way that never feels forced or jarring. It has one of the most unique versions of Peter ever put on screen, but that never shifts focus away from this being Miles' story. And in my opinion, it's probably the best superhero origin story movie since maybe Iron Man 1. And that's just one element of a film that's packed with gorgeous visuals, well-directed action, and a cast that's stacked with characters who could easily carry their own film. I was pretty tempted to put this at number 1. I really was. And I could probably be talked into it. But there's one movie that still tops it for me. Not that that takes anything away from this Oscar-winning achievement. Number 1, Spider-Man 2. So, number 1 hasn't changed. I wouldn't blame anyone for preferring the more recent Spider-Man movies to this one, but at the end of the day, it's still unbeatable for me. And the reason is pretty simple. This is a movie about the cost of being Spider-Man. And to me, that's maybe the most interesting element of this character. The daily grind of just being a superhero and how it tears apart nearly every relationship in Peter Parker's life. It's an idea that's just done so well here. Now, it's a movie with a lot of light, goofy Raimi charm, very far from like the grim dark of a Zack Snyder film. But its secret weapon is just how seriously it takes its characters. It's a movie that isn't afraid to just let us sit with Peter, May, or Otto. And it gives us those Evil Dead-inspired Doc Ock scenes right alongside quiet, tense conversations. From the train fight to Doc Ock's sacrifice, this is just a movie that understands what I find appealing about Spider-Man, and maybe superheroes in general. It's larger than life, but also quietly personal. And those things sound like a contradiction, but Raimi really had a way of making it work. There's a lot of different filmmaking styles found throughout these 8 movies, and a lot to take inspiration from. And if you're someone who's been thinking of diving into the world of directing and cinematography, I highly recommend indie filmmaking. Get the blockbuster look on a DIY budget. None of us have studio resources at our disposal, but this class is all about helping you create great-looking footage without any of that. Really in the true Sam Raimi making Evil Dead 1.
Okay, guys. What see he is. Hold on. Yeah.
You gotta cut out your bed, ain't you?
Uh-huh.
Entertain you, but actually.
Alright, guys. See y'all later.